Hi, and welcome back to the Health, Weight Loss and Wellness Show. And today, our very special guest is Matty. And Matty is an in-demand nutritional therapist, podcaster, and weight loss coach working with both women and parents. With a background working as a scientist of biology in the fields of cancer research and nutritional epigenetics, he was able to formulate a research-based approach to weight loss and human optimization. I love that. Coupling his professional background together with his vast experience in associated fields informs his core beliefs that health is 80% mindset and 20% what you do. That is so true. And likewise, Matty's weekly podcast, How to Not Get Sick and Die, great topic, great name for a podcast, provides his followers with a deep dive into the world of nutrition, weight loss, and disease in a fun, real, and practical way. I think we are, our minds are the same. Like all of that, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Welcome to the show, Matty. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jodie. I'm excited to be here. It's so good to do one of these with a fellow Aussie.
I know, me too. And I feel like we've got twin minds. Like just even reading that again, I'm like, that's totally what I think about is 80% mindset, because someone can give you, like I can give somebody a diet today that'll help them lose, a kilo a week and look fabulous, and exercise program that will help them tone up and like have a beach body, bikini body or whatever, no matter what age you are. But in 4 days, there'll be a breakdown and they won't go further with it. So, and that is all our mind.
Absolutely.
Our mind is an amazing, our mind can create illness in our body, and it can create happiness and unhappiness because we create all our own emotions. So I 100% believe that with mindset. Yeah. Yes. And obviously you...
Yeah, no, it's the most important variable, because, well, for me, as you said, I'm a scientist of biology and I worked in cancer research for many years. And the thing that I realized very early on was that nobody ever had a conversation about the cause. And Western medicine in its, purest form is about symptomology. And it was developed at a time and initially for acute and emergency medicine. And so when you apply acute emergency medicine to a chronic disease setting, which doesn't happen in 5 minutes, it happens over, 5 years to 5 decades, it doesn't really work. And we know that because most of the world is fat, sick, and nearly dead, right? Because the solutions that Western medicine offers are not helpful. And so the thing for me is I kind of realized, okay, well, why is nobody talking about the cause, and what is the cause? And so I was like, okay, first step was, obesity is the number one leader contributing to all chronic disease. And I was like, oh, whoa, okay. So why don't we fix that? And then I was like, what caused that? Next step.
Yeah.
Okay, food, and then getting into people's kitchens. The marketing and advertising industry and the education bodies as well for dietitians and doctors and nutritionists. These institutes and advertising companies are telling the everyday person, well, this is what you should eat, and most of that food is terrible, absolutely nutritionally deficient in everything.
Yeah.
Like breakfast cereal is one of the worst things you can put in your body, right?
Yeah.
And so people are being pumped with this idea, and like even the fun little fact is that the breakfast is the most important meal of the day was actually a marketing term said in the late 1800s by guess who? John Harvey Kellogg, who had $1 billion Kellogg cereal idea, right? And it became so ingrained because remember back then we couldn't Google stuff. It was in the papers, and so people read the papers. People at home, it started to become a belief, and now literally people say it all the time. It's not true at all. It's literally a marketing term. And so I got to there and I was like, so they've got the wrong information. People are eating incorrectly. And then I was like, what leads to that? And then it's like, well, our behaviors lead to our food choices, because there is some healthy people, and I've never met a person that didn't know vegetables weren't a good idea.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, well, if people know veggies and good meat and stuff like that is good, Why are they not doing it? And then it comes down to the mindset and the way that you believe you exist in reality and the behaviors which are normal to you. And so, sort of, I started at cancer and people dying in hospitals and ended up all the way back in people's own minds. And like the cause is the way that they see the world.
Yeah. And I just want to say what he said. Exactly. I mean, I could go on a rant, I think, for hours on some of these things that you're talking about as well. Like even the food that's in our supermarket, even our fresh fruit and vegetables doesn't have the nutritional value that it used to. Like our grandmother would have one peach, and the same amount of nutrients would be 52 peaches today as equivalent. Because we're raping the soil of all its nutrients by farming it, and then we're pouring pesticides all over that. And, companies like whoever made DDT, stuff like that, and let's poison the whole world, and you can still get traces of DDT in the ocean. How big's the ocean?
It's been banned for decades.
How big's the ocean? Like, you just stop it and have a moment. Everyone listening at home, have a think about that. They haven't sprayed that since what, the 70s? Maybe?
Yeah, 70s.
70s, and it's still traces found in the ocean.
Absolutely.
That is incredible. And other companies like DuPont, who made the non-stick pans, and they were doing that for years. Like they were making that product. I don't know, I think that was around the 70s. Might have been a really big industrial age of massive companies for massive profits, and let's kill whoever. We don't care. But they actually poisoned the world when they made that, because when they're making it, the smoke goes up into the air and circular goes around the globe, right? And we all have it, and it's something our body can never break down. And so we all have that in our bodies. And we wonder why cancer's getting worse. That's just one example, right? And I just can't stop. I can't not look at that and go, well, that's one example of a company. That's what we know. And they knowingly were killing people in their factory and kept doing it. And they're like, oh, well, that's not good. 3 of those people dropped dead. We'll just shuffle that aside. And we'll be, don't tell anyone. We won't put that chemical that killed all those people in the fry pans now. That's all they did.
Yeah, totally.
Still around.
Yeah, totally. But I think that we can focus on the toxins that are there, or we can focus on how to rebuild a better world. And I think that you touched on a point there too, which was that, like the nutrition in our food today, even the good stuff, is far less than the bad, but it's still way better than a Mars bar.
Oh, like, 100%.
So, and this might be a term that the people watching have not heard before, but voting with your dollar is so important, and regenerative farming is becoming a new thing and a new movement. And if you haven't watched the film Kiss the Ground, I highly recommend it, because it's about fixing the earth basically through regenerative farming. And regenerative farming is a model that dramatically increases the nutritional value of the food, the animals that are on those farms, the vegetables, the fruits, the nuts, the seeds. And so it's reversing what we've done over the last 100 to 200 years, basically. So, and it will be a thing in the future that you buy. It's like, there's organic and biodynamic, but regenerative farming is an entirely different model. And it's pesticide free as well. Like it is in its nature organic and biodynamic, but it's a totally different ecosystem on a farm. And the nutritional value, so when you get a regenerative apple, it's so much higher in nutritional value than your average organic apple. And that's a movement that's happening at the minute. And I've got a friend who runs a company that educates farmers on how they changed from conventional tilling and drying out the soil and the land, which depletes it of micronutrients and microorganisms, and transfers it over. It's usually like a 4 to 5 year period over to regenerative farming, where you're back to really dark colored dirt that's full of worms and full of life and therefore nutrition. So that's one way we can begin to fix the toxic reality of the earth.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Then leads to our guts being healthier, leads to our bodies being in better shape, because we're getting the fuel that we need.
Yeah, 100%. And just touching on that with the gut health, and we've had conversations about this before, but I just, from everything that I'm reading, and it annoys me a little bit, but I'm wrapped in a way. It annoys me that just the medical industry are catching up with it now, and you're seeing more and more doctors talking about it. So then it's classed as, oh, okay, well, we'll believe this now because a doctor said it. When we've really, there's been a lot of us have been talking about this for a long time, 20 years, 20 more. And, and we were like, woo-woos, because we were talking about this stuff and talking about how important food is, right? And how important what it is that we're putting in our mouths. That's what's actually making us sick. That's what's making, like it's causing our weight gain. Like, also, here's another thing, right? I'll go on another tangent, right? So gut health is so, so important. But what I'm finding also as well, I know people sitting at home will be experiencing this too, is doing everything right. For the majority, people eat, pretty well. We all know how to eat. Like, I'm a weight loss specialist, but I don't have to teach people what to eat. They know. But I'm finding that people are doing everything right. But then they're in this later kind of menopause area, the weight just keeps piling on, right? So it's not just food, is it, that we have to consider when we're looking at our weight?
Yeah, no, not at all. And there's a few things there. So we've got to remember that we've been cultured to think we should be a certain way, and the social media generation compounds that by about 1 billion. Like, there's 2 billion users on Instagram, right? And so when we go on there, and especially going through our, I heard it phrased like this once, and it's like going from your maternal years to your wisdom keeper years. And I love that. Like, it's got so much respect and dignity. And I think when we go on Instagram and we look at women that are 20 years younger, that have never had a shred of fat on them, maybe they've even got genetic backgrounds that mean that they never will have a shred of fat on them, and then we end up beating ourselves up. And so we're in this cycle. So the first element is that you're not meant to be anyone other than who you are, right? You're not meant to be like those people. If you want to be healthier, that's awesome. I definitely support that. Like, and we can help you get there. But the point is that first you have to own who you are and be like, this is me, this is my vehicle, this is my vessel, and that's the way it is, and I'm not going to be like that person or that person or that person. The second thing is that in that menopause phase, that your body fat literally physically takes over a hormonal function of the body. So as that cycle starts to disappear, which produces hormones in the body, when that cycle starts to disappear, those hormones drop. So your body literally creates fat cells to take over that hormonal production. So you are actually meant to gain a little bit of weight and get a little softer so that your body can keep functioning. Otherwise, it'll totally fall apart, right? So there is a degree of that. However, beyond that, and that degree is different for everyone, but beyond that, then we're in a situation where you might be eating perfectly, but we've got to remember that there might be 40 to 60 years of stuff, right? And if you've been somebody that's got a story or a life that's been hectic, busy, and you're the person that's like, hey, you been busy. Life's always busy. Life's crazy. Life's chaotic. And if you've been doing that for 40 to 60 years, then you've probably got cortisol resistance. So cortisol is the stress hormone, and adrenaline is another stress hormone. And if these have been up way more than they should have been, which most people in the Western world or in the whole world have experienced, right? Because we live in this go, 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 go world. Everybody feels like they're behind on everything all of the time. Then these hormones, when cortisol's up, fat loss is inhibited, right? Weight loss is inhibited. Add to that, most people watching this have probably been mothers, probably been sleep deprived for a really long time. If you have less than 8 hours sleep, so if you have 6 hours or less for a single night, your calorie intake for the next day, and I don't count calories, but this is a research study, goes up 300 calories, right? So one single night. Your decision-making ability drops 40%. So when it comes to food, not only are you going to consume more, you're going to make poorer decisions about those choices. So it's not just food, in menopause thinking, well, the kids have moved out of home and I'm eating right. We've got 40 years of poor sleep and 40 years of cortisol resistance that we're trying to sort out in like a 12-week program or, you know, a 6-week thing. And it's like, I always think about it like a mountain. So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Matty, want to lose 20 kilos? I'm like, awesome. Like, let's do that. And so my first question is, how long did it take to accumulate that 20 kilos? Because right now we're on top of the mountain, and if they'll usually say 15 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I'm like, okay, so we're at the top of the mountain and you took 20 years to walk from the ground to the top. And now you want to jump off the mountain in 8 weeks and solve a 20-year problem. And the maths doesn't work out, right? And so it's about being like, okay, this is where I'm at. It's back to the accepting yourself and your vessel. This is where I'm at. This is what I've got. And now I need to begin one step at a time to walk down the mountain and unwind those poor sleep habits, unwind that long-term stress, which your cells and your identity is so deeply tied to. And so, food is just one part of the equation.
Yes. What he said. 100%. Like, if we were talking about this earlier off camera, but for me, there was, I ran off nervous energy. So stress was a way of, like, I don't drink caffeine. So that stress was a way of, of energy. And that I would just drop kilos from stress. And so, and being a workaholic and working, and then having emotional traumas that go on in our lives as well. Yeah. It all accumulates. And I feel like it gets to this midlife part in our lives where our hormones are starting to slow down, and it just kind of all goes bang and hits us, and there's just so many of us that experience the same thing. And I'm in a few menopause groups as well, and it's incredible, the people in perimenopause, that their bodies are just breaking down. And when you talk about sleep, it also affects your sleep as well. I remember having when the extreme fatigue and unable to sleep. Yeah. So like you're feeling absolute exhaustion, but you can't go to sleep. There's nothing worse. Totally. And then you've got, like, I didn't have the menopause symptoms of hot flushes and things like that at that stage, where other people did. If anything, it was freezing cold all the time, because there was, like, I just dropped a stack of weight from being so stressed, and, not sleeping, and honestly not looking after myself in that time when I was stressed out and had the emotional trauma going on. So, all those things that you're talking about 100% makes sense. And I know there's some people also watching that can relate to that work and giving, right? And I think a lot of women give and give and give and give. And one reason for that is that we are, that stops us from looking at ourselves when we're busy helping others that need us, when we really need us. And the other part of that is not really understanding how to slow down, how to stop, right? Or giving yourself permission, right? Because women can be martyrs, and totally. When we're used to the kids first and the house first and the husband first, we'll bloody clean our house. We'll clean our house before stopping and resting. Totally. No one's coming over, right? No one's coming over. It's not like we're cleaning for we clean for the cleaners, but it's not like, people are coming over, shit, we better clean the house. That's our thing. We've got to get up, we've got to clean the house before we get a break. And I even remember the kids being young, right, they're asleep, I'll go and clean up and do the housework now. I was bloody exhausted when I should have just rested. And then I'd be like, right, okay, now I'll lay down. And then it's like, and the kid would wake up and it'd be like, oh my God, I'm never going to rest. But always we've got this pattern that we've learned all along to put ourselves last. And so when we get to this age now, it all catches up, and we still won't give ourselves permission to stop and then and relax and learn techniques to get rid of the stress, or how do we even do that? So say somebody else there is like me. Stress, 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 go, 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 give, give, give.
Yeah.
And now we're at this stage where we've got food sensitivities, and we've got fatigue, and we're carrying that extra weight, and we feel really uncomfortable. I feel like it's some days you feel like you're full of fluid and you're all puffed up, and it's just really uncomfortable. What would you suggest would be where would they start to go and resolve that?
So I guess where it's important to acknowledge, kind of like we started with talking about, the problems that have happened in the past with, companies creating toxic, substances that are really damaging to our bodies. So I think knowing the past is really important. Focusing on it's not a good idea, but knowing it. And so we really have to acknowledge that the way that you have lived your life, or that we live our lives in Australia or America or basically anywhere in the world, is so, I can't even language it. It's so far from natural and what's intended for the human body that it's an amazing feat that we even make it to 80 years old.
Yeah.
Like, we put ourselves through so much. And it's like, kudos to the human body for just figuring out how to navigate this chaos of life, right?
Yep.
So that doesn't help us solve the problem, but acknowledging, okay, I lived a life for the last however many decades that was not in alignment with how my body was intended to be. And I don't even mean this in a spiritual way. You can mean it in a spiritual way, but I mean physically. Like, we were not meant to be stressed even daily, not even once a day. Like, the stress response is there to get out of the way of a lion or a bear. Right? Whereas now, the lion or the bear is an email from your boss, a weird passive comment from your partner, the kids being annoying, somebody leaving a door open. And so we have this hormonal response in our body that our nervous system and our brain interprets as a life or death situation. So it's pumping out this run from the lion, run from the bear scenario 24/7. So now that we know we've lived like that, and the sleep getting in the way, and the food that we've not been treated ourselves to in the wrong way, and then so acknowledging the past is the first thing, I think, because it's like, okay, there were some things that I didn't get right, but now I know better, I can do better. So don't beat yourself up for a time where you didn't have the tools, because we didn't have the tools. We couldn't do any better. So, but now we can begin to figure out, okay, what is natural for me? What is right for me? And I think the first place that people need to start is who they want to be. Like, and the diet culture has also cultured us into thinking that I could just be somebody different in however many weeks, or I could just, I've been this person for 40 years, 50 years. In 8 weeks, I'm just going to be totally different. I signed up to this thing, and they said I'm going to do this and this and this, and it's going to be amazing. And identity change doesn't happen like that. It has to happen I call it one tweak a week.
Yeah.
You make one small step at a time, because the way that your nervous system and your brain behaves in regards to your identity is it creates this world or these rules this world that's governed by these rules that you've unconsciously decided. You're not really aware of them, but now maybe after this talk, you'll start looking, what are the rules in my life? How do I live my life? What are the do's and don'ts that I don't even think about? And so we have to, because the brain protects your identity so solidly, we have to experiment with baby steps. So changing one thing. And that's how I work with my clients. We figure out one meal at a time. We don't go, Monday, go and fill your trolley with 400 kilos of kale, right? We start with the mindset, but then when it comes to the food, we're like, for the next few weeks, we're just going to work on breakfast. We're just going to figure breakfast out and how that works in your world. And because you can't just be a healthy person overnight if that's not your identity, right? So you have to create this one step at a time. So figure out who you want it to be and start with one tiny little thing, one baby step that you're like, I'm going to nail this every single week or every day or whatever it is. And it has to be tiny. It can't be this major thing that you're like most likely to run out of time to do, or if the kids need this, I can't do it. It can be 5 minutes of self-care, right? Literally 5, but it's about developing the habit. It's about building the muscle of like, I'm actually worth my own time.
Yeah. I love that, because again, like what he said, I feel like, maybe we were separated at birth over so many different years, or from another life. Maybe we were another life. We were twins in another life.
Maybe.
With the habits, right? So like you're saying, the mind is a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it learns, like we didn't just come out of the womb and crawled, right? And so
Totally.
you see a baby learning to crawl and crying and having a fit and getting tired because those muscles are learning how to actually crawl.
Mm-hmm.
And then we learn to walk. So we don't get up and just walk straight away. So if you think back to, and that's when the brain is a sponge, right? And that's when it's learning really fast, when now it's full. So you've got to remember that for you to learn a new habit, that's going to take time and repetition. But not only that is in that time and repetition, it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to do it every single day. And then when you slip up, this is all fine. When we slip up the once where you throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But it's really stuff gets in the way and we forget. And then when we remember again, you go back into the habit, back into creating the habit. Now, hypnosis does help us lock that in faster.
Yeah.
But you still want to practice those habits. Like it's a learning. We've got to learn this new behavior. And, you know, your mind's like, I always like to say your mind's like a record. And we've created all these grooves in the records of all the habits, right? And so it automatically plays, and you'll wash yourself the same way every day. You'll dry yourself in the shower the same way. You'll make your coffee the same way, you know, every day. All your habits become automatic. And that's natural for your mind to work that way. If you could think about every single thing that you did, like if I want to pick up this mouse, I'd have to go, right, bend my elbow, lift my arm, turn my hand, close my fingers. Like that's not how your brain works, right? Your brain wants to be more efficient all the time. So this is why in that groove are all our own habit, all our normal habits, is your brain just being efficient. So you can use that to your advantage and go, all right, well, I want to create new grooves in the record. The old ones are still there. So you're going to have days where the old record just automatically plays because you're in the amongst of life until the new grooves get stronger and deeper, and these grooves start to get lighter, but sometimes they're always there. And I find sometimes somebody can be triggered into an old behavior 2 or 3 years later, like smoking. For an example, someone could quit smoking and then go to a high school reunion, catch up with all their old friends, and they were a smoker in high school, go to their old high school where they used to hang around. The brain doesn't know past, present, or future. It doesn't know what's real or what's not. All it knows that you're in this environment, and in this environment, you were a smoker, and it triggers the person so hard to smoke because those grooves are always there. And when you understand that, then you go, oh, I know what this is. It's just a trigger. It can't be a craving. There's no nicotine left.
Yeah. I love that example of the record. I think that's amazing. Like, that's a really good one. And actually, it reminds me, when you use the word trigger, is that most people watching this probably, I was talking about this on a podcast with a woman in England last night, and what most people experience is actually the outcome or the reward. And usually that is bottom of a thing of ice cream, bottom of halfway through a pizza or a chocolate, and that's where the awareness happens. So everyone is highly familiar with feeling like shit because the only part of the habit that they're consciously aware of is the painful outcome. And the only way you can make change to your habits is to be able to identify the anatomy of the habit, is to be able to be like, oh, this is the outcome. This is the bit in the middle, the routine that happens when I'm triggered, and this is the trigger. And if you can't see any part, and most people have never been informed or educated on how to observe themselves, I think that really is step one. Because if you can't observe yourself, you will never change your habits because you can't dissect them, pull them apart, understand why they happen, and replace them with something. So I think a lot of people are like, you know, they're told, do this, eat this, eat that, eat this. And they're like, I always end up here. Or no, I always, you know, I can't stop eating chocolate. I can't whatever. And that story is true, but we can make another story true as well. But the only way we can dissect or reverse a negative habit or an unhelpful habit is to be able to know the anatomy of it. First, observe it, identify the anatomy, because the first time you observe it, you'll be like, oh, That's interesting. I never knew that the chocolate that happens, it started 4 steps back here 3 hours earlier when I did a thing. And then the next time it happens, you'll catch yourself 1 step back and you'll be like, oh, I'm halfway through the habit. It's happening.
Yeah.
And then you'll do it again. And then you'll get to the point where the trigger happens and you're now fully aware of the process.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is the point where I can change the habit, because now, instead of just automating this process down this line and realizing at the end of the cycle and beating myself up for being weak, you can be like, okay, I'm now in a position to not be weak because I see the whole thing laid out in front of me. And I can see this is going to go to this, is going to go to this. And so now is the point that I can make a different decision. And even there, that's still really hard, because the different decision is not part of your identity.
Yeah.
Right?
So it feels weird because you're like, if we took away, in hypnosis, if we took away that, a pizza, and it just took that out of the memory, and then you would still have all those triggers going on leading up to it. And so that would just turn into something else. Totally. And so that's why I feel like a lot of people don't look at these things, and they'll take away this thing that they feel like, I call it the Band-Aid, right? There's really the sore underneath. They take away the Band-Aid, but the person's still got the trauma underneath that's causing that habit in the first place. And I find that trauma creates these links that come off. So this trigger what I find is it just keeps presenting itself in all different ways all throughout the person's life, until it's like the mind going, hello, there's a problem. Hello, there's a problem. All right, you're not listening, so I'm going to give you food addiction. Oh, hello, there's a problem. There's a problem. Hello. And so then I'm going to give you anxiety. I'm going to give you depression. And then I'm going to give you this. And I find that people come in, they've got all these, like a list, right, of all these things wrong. And when we heal that sore, boop, 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 they're all gone. Yep. So you can treat anxiety for 20 years, but if you don't treat the sore, the cause of it, trigger, you're never going to get rid of it. And so medication is never going to help, right? It's going to help maybe with the symptoms or put you in a place where you can start building awareness.
Yeah.
But 100% awareness. And it was funny, I just had a client yesterday, the same, she's in awareness stage, right? So just coming in with this list of light bulb moments of being aware. And once you are aware, and once you get the process of becoming aware, you can't undo that. So you start noticing it in everything that you do. And I love that, because I find that then that person's no longer dependent on somebody else to help them or save them or fix them, which is, we want to be self-sufficient. And 2, then they just get excited and curious about themselves. And then they start to love and accept themselves for who they are, and loving all the parts of themselves, because they've got that understanding. Oh, I know where that came from. That's not my word. That's my mother's words when I was 3 years old.
Totally.
Or, growing up. That's their belief. That's not what I don't want to believe that anymore. And so it just gives them this freedom, and you can see it in their face and the excitement, and drops years off how they look, because all that's no longer on them. Not only their thoughts, feelings and beliefs, but those of people that have been in their lives and came before them as well. So it's so important, that awareness stage, 100%, because if we're not aware of it, there is no way we're going to be able to fix it.
Yeah,
you don't know it's there, you can't fix it.
And it's important for everybody listening to remember that this can be a confronting process. And the people that I work with, often we do mindset first, and it's in the psychology piece, and it's like, it can be confronting because you realize some shit about your life. And some things that you've been covering up, or hiding from challenging conversations, or this kind of thing. Yeah, totally. So it's not necessarily easy, I think, but it can be easy for some people. It might not be triggering stuff. It might be really basic. It might be really complicated, and it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to just venture into this with curiosity, and if you don't go into it with curiosity, you'll end up beating yourself up for not being good enough and failing. So you have to be like, wonder what happens when I look at this, or I wonder what happens if I do this, and just that total kind of scientist experiment. Just be like, let's see what happens. Because if you don't take that, it doesn't end well.
And how you're feeling, and to know that too, because it can be scary, but knowing that how you're feeling is not going to last. So you may go
Hmm.
and have a discovery, and in that discovery, it might make you sad or angry or anything like that, and be okay with that, because there's no good or bad emotions. They're just
Totally.
emotions, and feel those emotions, and you've got every right to feel all those emotions, and you can be sad as long as you want, but understanding that's not forever,
Yeah.
and that's all in your control as well. So sometimes we can be a bit scared to go there as well. Now, I want to be mindful of your time. I know how busy you are. You've got your podcast, you're back to back. Now, you have got a special gift for those that are watching at home. Tell us
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've just got a PDF. So intermittent fasting is often a part of what I do. The mindset stuff's more important than the tools. But yeah, so I've got a free PDF that I'd like to share with everyone, and in there you can learn about whether it's right for you, whether it's not right for you, if it feels like a fit. There's lots of tools out there, and so it's more about finding what works for you and your body as opposed to just following the latest influencer.
Yeah, I love that. So thank you for that. That's really helpful. And intermittent fasting, I like it not for weight loss. I like it for the health benefits are
Same.
incredible. And you can really reset your gut. We could go on another podcast, another show, a total show
We
on
could.
just on the topic and how incredible intermittent fasting is. But I want to be mindful of your time, and I thank you so much for being here today. I've loved this episode, and hopefully everyone was writing notes at home, and have a think about that. Maybe pop in your promise jar, to start being more aware, and maybe practicing that, or looking up how to go about that. Maybe
Mhm.
go and jump on Matty's podcast. We'll actually put the links to that as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube and on Facebook, the link to get Matty's PDF and all his details will be on his speakers page. So you need to be registered to get access to that. The link will be in this description. So go ahead and sign up now. So that will show you how you can get access to all the speakers episodes as well, and watch on demand. This will be live for 48 hours. So rewind, replay. I find it very motivating, this conversation, and I thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for everything you do too, Jody. You're awesome. And this, 21 days is going to bring so much value. So, and thanks for everybody tuning in, because I think there's a lot of good conversations going on here.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks again. Bye, Matty.
Thanks. Bye.
See you all tomorrow.